Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and I thought it'd be a good time to look at how each and every deck is going to adapt coming in to our new format. Of course, we are entering a brand new format soon, and it'll be nice to look at the decks that will still be around in the rotation, but how are they going to adapt, as some decks are losing a lot of really relevant and big cards. What cards can be replaced? What cards can be played in their place? All that good stuff is going to be talked about here on the second channel. If y'all are interested in today's video and are excited, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe down below here to the second channel. This is a guide on how each deck is going to survive and adapt after rotation. Let's get things started. All right, starting things off, let's talk about Charizard. I think Charizard EX is the one deck that really doesn't lose anything with rotation and also gets probably better with rotation and might be the best deck in the format. Charizard does lose a few cards. It loses Battle VIP, it loses Level Ball, and Celebration's Mew. Pretty big losses in terms of, support. Battle VIP is a very crucial card, but now Charizard has access to Buddy Poffin, so it doesn't even matter. You can just play Buddy Poffin instead of Battle VIP, and Buddy Poffin gets you Pidgey, gets you Charmander. You're not going to be able to get Rotom V with it, so when you're playing at the Rotom engine, you have to probably play a higher count of Nest Ball now in order to make sure you're hitting Rotom turn 1. But I really do think that Charizard basically stays the same with rotation. I think that the Pidgeot build is still going to be the best way to play it. We might see people go back to playing the Entei in the deck. Maybe we'll see the Bibarelzar deck still be popular. Bibarel and Bidoof do work. Well, Bidoof, for example, works with Buddy Poffin. Radiant Charizard could go back in the deck. We could even see Toedscruel being played in the deck if Goldengo and Shenpao see a massive uptick in popularity with rotation, which there's a decent chance we might see stuff like Shenpao and Goldengo be a bit stronger with our new format. But yeah, the deck stays the same. I mean, you just swap out Battle VIP with Buddy Poffin. The tools are all still there. You do lose Justified Gloves, but now the deck's playing TM Devolution. The supporter accounts are still the same with the Arven, the Research, the Iono. Pidgeot's still going to be in the format. The deck basically stays the same. It does get a lot better. I think Prime Catcher is a really big buff to the deck. Charizard's already a deck that tries to use Gust a lot in a game. It plays 3 boss, Counter Catcher. It usually tries to Gust as much as it can. Now that it has Prime Catcher, you get a Switch card and a Gust card in one card, which is insane for Charizard. Being able to use Prime Catcher with Arven and Charizard is disgusting. Since Charizard is one of the best decks right now that gets to abuse Arven, it's going to be able to abuse Prime Catcher. I think there might be one tool left to look at, and we'll have to see if that new tool is going to be better than Prime Catcher, but I think Prime Catcher is the best tool for Charizard because it gives you a free switch, which Charizard already kind of lacks. He doesn't really tend to play switch cards. Decks can take advantage of it, and it's a Gust card. It's a Gust card that can make your Arven a boss. That's pretty disgusting. Yeah, Charizard is still looking to be good. And since we're going into this big basic EX meta, it looks like with all these new EXs coming out, I really think that Charizard is just going to be like the gatekeeper of these decks where it's like, okay, all these big cool EXs can exist, but they're probably just not going to be Charizard because Charizard is just too strong. The deck basically stays the same, and I wanted to get that out of the way. All right, time to talk about Lost Box. Now, Lost Box is a deck that really does still have a lot of resources at its disposal. Though it does lose some valuable cards, I think some of the big losses Lost Box loses, obviously, Battle VIP. Another big one is Escape Rope. That's a pretty big loss for the deck. And there's also the loss of cards like Clara and Raihan, which some Lost Zone variants do like to run a couple copies of in their deck. It also loses Kyogre, which was a very relevant attacker. Dragonite V also rotates, which was another very good attacker, though Dragonite's fallen off in Lost Zone recently. Those are some pretty big losses. I think Kyogre is a very big loss for the deck because now with all these big basic EX decks coming out, Lost Box can't just Kyogre for game as easily, which is kind of sad. I think Kyogre would have been a really cool card to have in the format still because, again, with all these big basics coming out, Kyogre would have been really good still. But yeah, Lost Box, it's still gonna be played in my opinion. There's still a lot of ways you could theoretically play the deck. We have a lot of cards still available. Giratina V-Star stays in the format. Giratina does lose Path to the Peak, which is a big loss. It also loses Escape Rope, which the deck usually played a couple copies of, but for the most part, Giratina kind of stays the same, apart from just not having Path, which was one of the best cards in the deck, but maybe Giratina's fine without Path because you just have the raw power of being able to hit hard, have an insta-KO attack. Giratina can maybe still go toe-to-toe with Charizard too. We'll have to see on that. The Roaring Moon Iron Hands build of Lost Box can still exist. Yeah, the deck can still play Mirage Gate. You still have Radiant Greninja Instead of playing Escape Rope, you're probably going to have to play both Switch card and normal Switch, which it's fine. Escape Rope was a good card, but there's a lot of times where playing a rope actually might not have been a relevant play because you don't want to force your opponent to also switch. You want to make sure you're the only one switching. So Switch card and Switch might be okay in the deck. The deck still has Pokestop, which could still be good if you're still obviously playing a ton of items like Mirage Gate, all these switches, Nest Balls. Buddy Poffin is another big upgrade. Well, no, it's not really a big upgrade. Battle VIP is infinitely better. Buddy Poffin is going to be replaced in the deck. You can play Buddy Poffin with Comfey and Ditto in the deck, so Ditto does technically count as a Buddy Poffin target, and Ditto can turn into any of these Pokemon you want it to. You can use Ditto to turn into Cramorant turn 1, into a V Pokemon, an EX Pokemon. You can play Buddy Poffin with Comfey. You can use Ditto with Radiant Greninja, though you'd have to have Ditto in the active spot. But Lost Box can just play Buddy Poffin now, which is a fine addition to the deck. Again, you can't use it to get Greninjas and stuff, but you can still use it to get Comfeys, which is very relevant, in my opinion, still to chain Comfeys. Rapid Strike rotating could also be pretty big for Lost Box. There's no longer the threat of Rapid Strike in the format, so the deck doesn't really have to worry about that anymore. Sablezard might get a little bit weaker because it does lose Clara. Clara is a very good card to have in that deck because you are able to loop Radiant Charizard multiple turns in a row. You no longer have that as an option. You also lose Raihan as a way to fuel Charizard up a little bit quicker. The Sablezard deck may get a little bit weaker, but that deck could still play, like, Roaring Moon and Charizard. Maybe that's going to be the way to go now that Radiant Greninja is less likely to be used since Battle VIP is no longer in the format. Maybe Lost Zone Goodra could come back, too. The deck can still play cards like Zamazenta. Zamazenta still exists. Maybe we'll see more Grass-type attackers in these Lost Zone variants. That's why I have cards like Shaman V and Woshin pulled up, just some of the stronger Pokemon we've seen in these Lost Box decks for grass attackers. Tropius rotates, super effective Glasses rotate, so that style of Lost Box deck is no longer going to be around, but we could still see stuff like Shaman V and Woshin team play as grass-type attackers against Charizard, which, like I said, I think Charizard is going to be insanely good still in the rotation, so having some grass attackers will still be good. The deck obviously still keeps Colress, which is a big deal. Cards like Palpad, Lost Vacuum, they're still going to be around. Town Store can still exist alongside Forest Seal Stone. Lost Box can play Prime Catcher too. Lost Box usually does play like a couple boss. Obviously, Counter Catcher is another card that they like to play, but now they can play Prime Catcher. Now you have Promotion and Gust in one card. Prime Catcher is a really good card to play in these Lost Zone decks because now you can promote Comfey for the turn, Flower Select, and do a Gust and switch at the same time, which is really good. It's like a 2-in-1 package. So Prime Catcher, I think, is going to be the normal ace-spec card you're going to see in these Lost Zone decks. We'll have to see how Lost Zone adapts. There are other basic EX Pokemon that are coming out within these new set and Temporal Forces that maybe Lost Box can play. Maybe it'll play stuff like Gouging Fire. Maybe Lost Box will play stuff like Raging Bolt. This is another big upgrade. The deck could play Raging Bolt as an engine too, because it'll play similarly to how you played Amazing Rare Rayquaza Lost Box. But that's how Lost Box is going to adapt. I think the deck still has a lot of resources, a lot of attackers to choose from. Losing cards like Rope and VIP are pretty big losses. It does lose Kyogre, but it does gain cards like Prime Catcher and Buddy Poffin, which will help offset the deck a little bit. Next up, we have Arcpiles. Now, I'm really excited for Arceus in the rotation. I think Arceus is still going to be decent, though it does lose Path. And I think that's one of the big losses Arceus does lose is, of course, Path of the Peak, because now you no longer have the ability to easily abuse Judge Path. Well, I did play Arctina Superior to an online tourney. I did win with it, so I think that Arcpiles are still going to be around in our new format. The deck still has a lot of options to choose from. For starters, we do, of course, have a lot of attackers. Now, the attackers are limited, and in fact, I think a lot of the V-Star Pokemon are going to come in to replace the V-Maxes that Arcpiles played. Arctina will still be good. You still have Superior as a grass attacker. You still have something like a Alolan Vulpix V-Star. Well, you don't have Flying Pikachu anymore. You still have Vulpix, which can still be a good anti-meta wall card. There's still cards like Aerodactyl V-Star, which we've seen Arceus play before. Regidrago could still be around. All the dragon Pokemon are still... There's still like a decent amount of dragons like Goodra, Tina. You still got Noivern, which is good. Another grass attacker could be Leafeon V-Star. You do lose Leafeon V from Evolving Skies, which allowed you to attach energy to your Arceus at the... end of your turn, but you could still use the Leafeon V-Star as an attacker, which does technically have a bit more tank than Superior because of its attack taking 30 less damage. There's still fighting Pokemon if you ever want to counter a lightning deck. There's still Hisuian Decidueye, Machamp VMAX could be a nice bulky attacker. I think Arceus Regigigas will still be good. Regigigas can still hit those really good numbers. Regigigas can also play the brand new Relicanth that's coming out, so you can actually copy Regigigas V's attack. So Arc Regigigas might actually be a deck thanks to the Relicanth coming out. Arc still has Bibarel and Scovid Engine. You could play Aggron, you could play Lilligant as a grass attacker. There's still attackers. Arc Gudra still exists. The deck can play Spiritomb. I think Spiritomb's still worth it because of cards like Luminion and Rotom still existing in our format. But let's take a look here at some of the engines the deck can play. So, Arc does, of course, lose cards like Raihan, which is a big deal. It also loses Melanie as a way to accelerate energy. So Arc does lose that extra energy acceleration that sometimes it likes to play if you whiff that turn 1 energy. Maybe you could play Gardenia as a way to get energy in play, just an idea. Obviously, you still want to use Iono and Judge, I think. You could also play cards like Mist Energy. Now, Arc tends to play, special energy off cards. Sometimes you'll play a V-Guard Energy. Sometimes you'll play a Jet Energy. Well, you could also play Mist Energy now. If Roaring Moon stays popular, Mist Energy could be really good within Arceus, because you can put it on your Arceus, and then your Arceus can't get KO'd by Frenzy Gouging, which is a very big deal in my opinion. Not being able to get KO'd by Frenzy Gouging is pretty big, and that's why I think Mist Energy might be a pretty good card to include within the Arc pile deck. I think Prime Catcher could be a good upgrade to the deck as a switch card and a Gust card. You could play cards like Crushing Hammer and Arceus if you want as a way to disrupt your opponent. Arc Hammers have existed before, and they could still see play. You could still play cards like Slacking V in the deck alongside Hammers and Spiritomb. There is obviously EXP Share. That could be a weird card to play, but if you whiff a Turn 1 energy on your Arceus, or you're afraid your Arc's going to get KO'd, you can put an EXP Share onto an Arceus on the bench so that if your active gets KO'd, you can at least still keep up in the attack department. So it's kind of like a pseudo Raihan in the deck. The tool cards are still good. You can play TM Devo to help against Charizard. Leafy Camo Poncho you could still play. You could still use Box of Disaster, which is a very big card to play within the deck. Box is going to be a great card to have in Arc piles. And there's also cards like Vengeful Punch and Choice Belt still for some extra damage. Now, the stadiums are where things get a little tricky. Arc really liked playing Path to the Peak. Path to the Peak now rotates out of the format, so what's going to replace Path to the Peak? Well, the two best answers are probably going to be Lost City and League Headquarters. Lost City is probably the best replacement right off the gate because it's a pretty straightforward card. Arc doesn't usually play Super Rod, so I'm sure Arceus will still be fine playing Lost City. If these Lost Zone decks still are played, I mean, Lost City's still going to be really good against them. And there's obviously League Headquarters, which I think is the second best replacement to Path. Now, League Headquarters makes basic Pokemon's attacks cost 1 colorless more. Sometimes, maybe against these big basic EX decks, what you can do is instead of using Judge Path, you can use Judge and League Headquarters. So then all of a sudden you're forcing them to get an extra energy to attack your Arceus, and sometimes they'll fall short on the attack. It could be a decent way to prevent your opponent from attacking, so League Headquarters Judge could be the new way Arc Pile C play. But yeah, Arc I think is still going to be a fine deck. I think the addition of Mist Energy is a nice addition if Roaring Moon becomes more popular. It just has to adapt to the meta and has to play certain Pokemon to counter certain top decks. I really do like the Regigigas with Relicanth. I'm still a fan of Giratina's Superior combo to help against Charizard. Alolan Vulpix V-Star could be pretty good if we see stuff like Shempao become popular and Goldengo. Gudra could be a good tank. Regidrago could still exist. Arc's still not in a bad spot in my opinion. Losing Path sucks, and that is a pretty big loss, but it can adapt, and I think Arc will still be a play deck. Next up, we have to talk about Gardevoir, which arguably lost the most amount of good cards with rotation. I mean, Gardevoir lost Mirage Step Curlia, Zacian V, Shine Arcana Gardevoir. It loses Celebrations Mew. It loses VIP, Fog Crystal, Level Ball. Gardevoir takes a beating with rotation. But if I'm being honest with you, I don't think Gardevoir is completely dead. I think Gardevoir actually can still survive in our new format, and here's why. So Gardevoir still has some decent attackers to choose from. For starters, I think Screamtail is still going to be a nice attacker in the deck alongside the Cape, the Charm, or even the Ancient Booster Capsule. I think a Screamtail Guardy deck is probably going to be the new way Gardevoir is going to see play. Same thing with Drifloon. Drifloon, much like Screamtail, might be the new way to play Gardevoir. Drifloon can do 30 damage for each damage counter on it, so you can play Drifloon with Gardevoir now as an option. That could be the new way to play Gardevoir. There's also, Drifblim, Relicanth. I saw that as a combo people were talking about. I think it's probably better to play Drifloon with these Cape and Charm combos. The other thing is there's a new A-Spec that Gardevoir might actually want to play. There's, of course, this new Giant Cape A-Spec, which gives the Pokemon it's attached to plus 100 HP. That's going to be pretty big when you put it on your Screamtail or your Drifloon. Gardevoir still does get to keep Refinement Curlia, which is a big deal too. Having access to Refinement is good. A lot of decks right now don't have a built-in draw engine with their own attacker like Gardevoir does. Gardevoir still gets to play Refinement. Well, you do, of course, lose Mirage Step, which is really good to have because it allows you to just cheese out a bunch of Curlias at once. You still have Refinement, and that's still fine. You can still use Rare Candy Gardevoir to skip an evolution, try to get the EX in play as quick as possible. Refinement, Reading Greninja still do exist. You do have some other interesting two-prize attackers. You could play Iron Hands, will still probably give you issues, but you could play the Deoxys V-Star, which we've already been seeing have a little bit of success within Gardevoir right now as a way to deal with Iron Hands. Deoxys V-Star can use that attack for 1 energy to knock out Iron Hands in 1 hit if it's a prom. You also have Whimsicott V-Star. I've seen some talk of that. You can use Whimsicott's V-Star power as like another snipe attack. You could also play Klefki in the deck. This could be a weird idea, but Klefki could be kind of cute. You can slow the opponent down. If all these big basic EX decks are aligned heavily on cards like Squawkabilly and Radiant Greninja to set them up, you can have a Klefki in the active to slow them down while you slowly try to work towards your game state where you're getting energy in the discard, you're getting Gardevoirs, you're getting refinements in play and all that stuff. So that could be a good reason to play Klefki within the deck just to slow your opponent down and buy you a couple turns. You can also play Mimikyu to try to cheese wins too. There is that as an option. Cresselia, I think, is still going to be in the format too, which is still another attacker Gardevoir can play. You still have, Manaphy and Jirachi, which is going to be nice. Collapse Stadium and Artisan still exist. In fact, Gardevoir can play Buddy Poffin. Buddy Poffin's not a bad card in the deck either. Buddy Poffin does get you Drifloon and get you Ralts, which is a pretty good card to have for those cards. So maybe Buddy Poffin is going to be another way Gardevoir sees play. So Gardevoir still has some decent tools in the format to work. I don't think Gardevoir is going to be dead. I think Gardevoir will be a lot weaker and not as good as it used to be, but I can't see Gardevoir completely dying off. I think the deck will still be fine in the new format. It still has some decent cards to work with. It does have to lean more into these extra HP cards in order to work, unless we get some pretty insane Psychic Pokemon in our new set. We'll have to see, though, but definitely don't write Gardevoir off just yet. I think Chien-Pao definitely also survives rotation pretty nicely. In fact, I think it might even get better with rotation, mainly because with Charizard being really popular, there's now a world where Chien-Pao could be a lot better. Now, Chien-Pao has always been a pretty hit-or-miss deck in terms of how relevant it can be, mainly because it's got a weak engine. Sometimes, the Baxcalibur is easy to take advantage of with TM Devo in the format and stuff like that. But Chien-Pao honestly doesn't seem bad in our new format, mainly because it does have access to a lot of cards still. In fact, it also doesn't really lose a lot of cards, other than really just Battle VIP. And Battle VIP is a decent loss for the deck, obviously. It also loses Cross Switcher if you wanted to play the Cross Switcher Cologne build, but the deck still has a decent amount of options to choose from. You can still play the deck how it is. You still have Greninja, obviously Baxcalibur, you still have Chien-Pao. You could even play Iron Hands in the deck if you want to go down the hands route of Chien-Pao. There's also a Bibarel, which still stays in the deck, which is a pretty big deal. The Bibarel engine is the ideal way to play Chien-Pao in terms of a draw engine. That still exists. Irida stays in the format. Irida does not rotate. Melanie's the water supporter that rotates, not Irida. So Irida's still going to stick around, which is nice for Chien-Pao. You also get access to cards like Superior Retrieval, which still sticks around. You still have Canceling Cologne in the deck. Pokestop still exists as a great engine to set up your deck. And that's nice. The deck can play Buddy Poffin now, which can find you Bidoofs and Frigibaxes, because at the end of the day, Chien-Pao wants to get Baxes in play, and Frigibax can easily be obtained with Buddy Poffin. In fact, being able to get 2 Frigibaxes is actually pretty good, because ideally that's what we want to do, because if you only have 1 Baxcalibur in play and no other Frigibax, your opponent will obviously boss KO it, and then you can't attack. So Buddy Poffin's a great card to play in the deck, because it can get you 2 Frigibaxes, which keeps up the pressure of having the double Baxcalibur. I think Prime Catcher could be a good one-of in the deck, too. It's a great way to pivot between 2 Chien-Paos, but you can also use it to Shivery Chill Prime Catcher and go for like a Prime Catcher Canceling Cologne play, because Prime Catcher does work with Pokestop, so I think Chien-Pao will still be fine in the rotation. It might get even better. Maybe we'll see Palkia be a tech card in the deck. I mean, Arceus V-Star is another card Chien-Pao's played, but yeah, I think Chien-Pao is going to be fine in the new format. It might not be as good against some of the big basic EX decks that are a little bit faster than it potentially, but overall, I don't think Chien-Pao is going to be a bad deck in the new format. I think it might be another deck that could keep up with the Charizard meta, and that's going to be a big deal. I think as long as you can keep the deck consistent and fast, I think it can keep up with the likes of Charizard, and that's what we're going to need in the format. One of the bigger basic EX decks that can keep up with Charizard is going to be Chien-Pao. Yeah, Chien-Pao seems fine. I don't think it loses too many relevant cards, and then the deck still has a lot of its core engine in rotation, and that core engine still translates well in our new format. All right, Miraidon definitely does feel like it could be a lot worse with rotation because of the loss of Flaaffy. Flaaffy and Raihan are pretty big losses for the deck. You can no longer have that late game energy acceleration as much as you would have liked anymore. Miraidon tends to have one of the best early games of any deck in the format thanks to Electric Generator, but now that it loses Flaaffy, that late game stability might get hurt a little bit. Well, Miraidon might still be okay, and here's why. Miraidon still has a lot of good Lightning Pokemon to choose from. I don't think every Lightning Pokemon I have listed here is going to be played in the deck, but I just wanted to give the options there, for this video. Of course, we got the Fruit Tree Miraidon, you got Magnezone V-Star, Zapdos EX, you still have Luxray V, you still have Regieleki VMAX, which could be the new replacement in the deck over Flaaffy, we've seen, Regieleki VMAX be the way Miraidon saw play back in the day. Tapu Koko EX is still in the meta. Koko EX is great in the deck, actually, especially for the Charizard matchup. You still have some cards that the deck already plays. I mean, Zapdos is in the deck still, which is great against these 230 HP basic Pokemon we're getting. There's obviously Iron Hands EX, which is huge. Raichu and Raikou still exists, which is great. You still have Squawkabilly and Mew in the deck as your support Pokemon. The deck still has a lot of its fundamental attackers. It just loses Flaffy, which can be a bit of a big loss. The deck can still play cards like Judge and Path, though. Obviously, you still have access to Electric Generator, but you can also play Energy Sticker now. Energy Sticker is not as reliable as Generator. You have to flip a coin, and then if heads, put energy from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon, but you can definitely use Energy Sticker as a way to get energy into play. While it's not as good as Generator, it might be, another way to get energy into play. Sometimes Sticker might, be reliant on how Miraidon sets up. Another card you can still play, though, is EXP Share. I think EXP Share is still going to be popular in the deck. You still have Force Seal, Bravery Charm, and EXP Share for your tools, but I do like the idea of playing EXP Share in the deck as a way to keep energy into play, which honestly might just have to be the way the deck sees play. But you can also play 2 new Ace Specs. I think Prime Catcher is a nice upgrade to the deck. It's just a great way to switch and gust the opponent, which is something that Miraidon likes to do. Likes to have these pivot cards with Beach Court and stuff. So Prime Catcher could be a great card to have within Miraidon. But you also can play the new Reboot Bot. Now, the reason why you'd play Reboot Bot is because it works with Iron Hands. It's another way to get Iron Hands powered up really quickly. You can use Generator. You can attach from hand to Iron Hands like double Turbo Energy. Miraidon can use that to get energy on Iron Hands. But you can just literally play Reboot Bot as a free way to power up your Iron Hands. Reboot Bot allows you to put a basic energy from discard pile to each of your future Pokemon in play. So you can have like a couple Iron Hands in play. You can get 2 energy into play for free on them. If you're leaning more into the Iron Hands approach with this deck, Reboot Bot is going to be a great addition to Miraidon. It's just another way to power up Iron Hands even quicker, and also will make your turn 1 Iron Hands even quicker too. I guess also to note, Miraidon does lose Peony, which is another loss. That Peony Miraidon build has gotten a lot more popular, and Miraidon no longer has access to Peony, but I do think Reboot Bot is going to be a great addition to the deck. I think Reboot and Prime Catcher will both kind of be the ideal Ace Specs for the deck, though I think Reboot Bot is a lot stronger due to the fact you can get Iron Hands off a lot quicker thanks to Reboot Bot. Roaring Moon definitely feels like a deck that's going to be even stronger in our new format, and that's mainly because the deck doesn't really lose a lot of stuff. In fact, it's going to gain a lot more than it's going to lose. The biggest loss is obviously Battle VIP is going to be a big loss because you can no longer easily search out Squawkabilly and Moon turn 1. It does hurt your turn 1 consistency quite a bit, actually, but the deck can still adapt, and it still gains a lot of new cards. There's a new Ace Spec card coming out that lets you draw a card for each ancient Pokemon in play. Moon could also play Prime Catcher. The deck does lose Cross Switcher, so Prime Catcher might be the way to go in the deck, but I do think that Moon is still going to be fine. It still has a ton of options, and there's a ton of new ancient cards coming out in our new set that Moon can also play. I mean, you still have Sada, you still have Earthen Vessel, and Pokestop as an option. Energy Switch is still going to be around in the format. You can play Darkrai V-Star, which might be the new way to play it. Darkrai V-Star can get you back your items. You can get back the Prime Catcher or that ancient Ace Spec card. So there's definitely some room for Darkrai to be popular in the deck. You have Dark Patch still for Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon definitely feels like it still could be okay. Some other cards it could play, it could lean more into Trekking Shoes, just more ways to find basics, because at the end of the day, the deck's turn 1 is going to be a lot weaker because of the loss of Battle VIP. You can play cards like Ultra Ball and more Nest Ball. You could even try playing Great Ball in the deck as a way to find Pokemon. Just finding Pokemon is going to be pretty important in the Roaring Moon deck. I think that's going to be one of the things the deck needs to kind of stabilizes. Yeah, it does lose a lot of these good cards like Battle VIP. So you have to play cards like the Great Ball, like the Ultra Ball, like the Nest Ball to find your Pokemon, and that could be a big deal. This is where the Ancient Ace Spec card could be really good because you can use the Ancient Ace Spec card to draw cards, and you can see a lot of cards in a turn. You have Sada, Greninja, the Ancient Ace Spec card. There's a lot of ways you can draw a lot of cards. You can even try playing Gift Energy in the deck as a way to stabilize and keep your hand nice and big going into your next turn. There's a lot of options for Roaring Moon in the new format. I think the big thing Roaring Moon will have to figure out is that early game and getting your Pokemon in play, setting up your board, getting Greninja, getting Squawkabilly, getting a couple Moons down. That turn 1 board state is definitely going to be a little bit weaker, but with all the new ancient cards coming out, and I'm sure we're going to get even more, Moon might be good. Moon might have to start playing Temple of Sinnoh if Mist Energy sees play, in my opinion. I guess that's one thing I wanted to note is if we do see Mist Energy be a bit more popular, you might have to start playing the Temple of Sinnoh in Moon to counter Mist Energy. All right, we do have to talk about everyone's favorite deck, Snorlax Doll, which honestly still feels like it might be a deck after rotation. It still has some good tools. I mean, it still has good supporters like Misfortune Sisters, like Erica's Invitation, like Giacomo, but it also gains a brand new supporter card that allows you to discard 2 items from your opponent's hand, which is really good because it's another way to get rid of switches, which is how you want to counter Snorlax. You could even play Hand Clipper in the deck, too. The deck still has good tools. It's got Bravery Charm and Defiance Vest. You could even play the new Giant Cape A-Spec card in the deck to give your Snorlax more HP. You could also play Prime Catcher in the deck if you want to, as another Gust card, which is also an option. But Snorlax might also have to worry about Prime Catcher because Prime Catcher is also a switch card at the same time as the Gust card. So Snorlax could, have to worry a little bit about Prime Catcher, but probably not too much. I don't think Prime Catcher is like the biggest hurdle for Snorlax to get over or anything, but the deck still feels like it's still going to be relevant. We'll have to see if it can keep up with these big, basic EX decks that are going to be really fast. Those might be the decks Snorlax is going to have to really compete with, because I think Snorlax will still be really good against Charizard. Like, I think Charizard will still get completely farmed by Snorlax. Even with cards like Prime Catcher giving Charizard a free Gust card, I think the deck will still be fine against Charizard. You can even use the new supporter card to get rid of their rare candies early on, which sometimes can slow the Charizard deck down quite a bit and give you some time to stabilize. There's definitely a lot of cards the deck can still play. The deck does lose Crabominable V, but you can still play Shiyu in the deck instead of Crabominable, which we've actually been seeing in the Snorlax decks. You can even play Luxray V in the deck still as a disruption card. There's also the Pidgeot Snorlax build, which could also still be the way to play it with the Pidgeot EX. But yeah, I think Snorlax, unfortunately, will still be here. I don't think the deck's going to get, any worse. I don't think the deck's going to die off. I think as long as it can keep up with these big basic decks that we're going to be getting with our new set, Snorlax will still be here in our format, and it will still probably terrorize the meta. How good will it really be, though, is going to be the main question. We'll have to see on that. But I think Snorlax is still going to be in the format, and unfortunately, all these Snorlax haters, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer for this deck to fall off. All right, and the final deck I wanted to talk about with rotation is Lugia. Now, Lugia has fallen off quite a bit recently, but Lugia does also, it might get a bit weaker with rotation, I'm going to be honest with you. It does lose the entire single strike engine. So we are seeing archetypes completely vanish, like Mew's going to be gone, Rapid Strike's going to be gone, but single strike's also going to be gone too, and that includes the loss of the single strike engine. Now, I don't know if single strike was going to be that good in Lugia anyways with rotation, but it could have been good. It can keep up with some of these big basic decks, but Lugia does still have some room for popularity. Lugia has been evolving over the course of the set release of Paradox Rift, and that's because of the Earthen Vessel engine that the deck has been playing, using Earthen Vessel as a way to discard your Archeops, but also just using cards like Iron Hands as an attacker, leaning into the Radiant Charizard with the Fire Energy Vessel combo, having even Shaman V in the deck has been common. I think Lugia can now just more lean into the Earthen Vessel build, but this colorless build of playing Lugia might still exist. There are still very strong colorless attackers. A big one is obviously the Snorlax is still going to be in the format, which is a great card to have in Lugia. Slacking V you could still play. You could even play the Weird V still as your big blow-up attacker, which could be good against these, big basic decks. You still have the Radiant Charizard, which can be in that deck too, Luminous Energy. The big one, though, in my opinion, is going to be trying out Regigigas V-Star. Now, Regigigas V-Star might have to be the new partner for Lugia, and that's mainly thanks to Regigigas being a really bulky card Lugia can play, but it also does really relevant damage with 230 damage. On top of that, you can play Relicanth in the deck. So I think Relicanth, Regigigas, Lugia could be a decent archetype because you can use Relicanth to copy Regigigas' Get Angry attack. You can also play Heavy Jet Energy to pivot between the Regigigas as a pivot. You can play the Charizard. You can even try the Earthen Vessels. Well, I don't think that'll be very good. You could try it out. I think one of Lugia's biggest hurdles, though, with rotation is ultimately just going to be Charizard. Charizard's going to suck to play against because they can use Prime Catchers and Boss to, KO your Archeops every turn. And once you're out of Archeops, Lugia does lose a lot of its steam and it derails pretty quickly. But I do think that Lugia will still be an okay deck in the rotation. I think it does have to lean more into the colorless build, but also can lean more into the Vessel build. You still have a lot of the supporters. I mean, you still have Research and Iono, but you can also play cards like Serena and Zinnia if you're really struggling to discard Archeops. You got the Earthen Vessels, Ultra Ball, Great Ball, Captain Aroma are still going to be in the meta. You still have a lot of special energy. In fact, the deck does gain one big special energy that I did also want to mention, and that is, of course, Mist Energy, which is a huge card to have within Lugia. Mist Energy is really good in the deck because it does allow you to have an easier time against Roaring Moon, and Lugia is one of the best decks that can play the new Mist Energy. Mist Energy is so good within Lugia because you can put it on a Pokemon like, you know, the Regigigas or even the Iron Hands or whatever, or the Weirdeer, and then all of a sudden Royne cannot use Frenzy Gouging to 1-hit KO you thanks to Mist Energy. We'll have to see if those decks are going to play Temple of Sinnoh. It really does come down to how popular Mist Energy is, but I think Lugia doesn't have to worry about Temple of Sinnoh at the start of the format because I don't think many decks honestly will play it. But Mist Energy is a great upgrade for Lugia, and I think that's going to be one of the things that might keep Lugia a little bit stabilized, is if we do see Royne pop off and become popular, we might see Mist Energy also become relevant, because Lugia is one of the best decks that can abuse Mist Energy. But I did want to mention Lugia here because I think Lugia still has some interesting cards, and it does gain a nice new card with the addition of Mist Energy. A lot of its core pieces are still there. A lot of the special energy, a lot of the attackers, apart from the single strike package, all the supporters and ball cards are still there. The stadiums are still there. Mesagoza, Collapse Stadium, they're all still there. You still have a decent amount of attackers to choose from, and who knows, maybe we'll see even more attackers come out in the new set. But there you have, folks. That is it for all of the decks that will get upgraded with rotation. I was going to maybe talk about Gholdengo. I think Gholdengo mostly stays the same. It does gain Buddy Poffin. I did want to give an honorable mention to Gholdengo, but there are a lot of decks that we will be losing, but a lot of the decks that exist will carry over into the new format, and I think every deck that I mentioned here is going to be fine, because we're still going to see a lot of new archetypes pop up, like all the new basic EXs, the Future Box deck, you know, Raging Bolt, Walking Wake, Gouging Fire. We might even see some crazy stuff like Incineroar EX become a meta deck. Dialga Metang might be good. So I'm excited to see what comes out of the new format. And all these existing decks, will they be able to survive the new format? We'll have to see how it all goes. Let me know what you thought of this video down below. What do you think of the new decks? How will they adapt? What is your favorite new deck that will carry over from the rotation? I'm interested to hear down below. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. That'll be it for me. Hope you all enjoyed this rotation guide part 2. Catch y'all later. Bye-bye.